Okay, let's look at Server 2008. At this point, I had you creating your own virtual machine because I knew these were already built. And that's why last week you had a very one lab exercise. That's not going to be holding true for today or this week, but I've turned on Server 1 and out of my network clients, and I want to show you a few features which are really important. When you walk through Chapter 2, one of the screens that actually comes up is called the OOBE, and if it doesn't pop up, hit Start and just type in OOBE, and this is referred to as the out-of-box experience. It's a very important one. This is the screen that's supposed to provide you with the initial configuration that you should do on every server prior to giving its roles. The one thing about Server 2008 is they made it modular, meaning out of the box, every server, if you do nothing with it at all and install it, it's a file server. We're not part of an active domain right now. We have nothing installed on it. So when you do the OOBE, you will actually see not activated. For the purposes of these labs, it doesn't matter if they're activated, but it will tell you time zone. And you should always go in and do at least these first 4 items every single time. So set the time zone, which has been done for us. You also will configure the network settings, and you'll provide a computer name and domain. Now, when you first, if you noticed when you built your own server, the computer name was this WIN, W-I-N, dash 0756712C521, and it's just this god-awful name. You really have to make sure you go in and change these names. So we very quickly would go, all you have to do is hit time zone. You can change it once you're done with that. I usually do the name next, and the name, when you change it, should be, we don't call them Server 1, Server 2. The only reason they're called that way right now is because that's the way this was set up for us, which is fine. But going forward, you would call it something that is going to represent your new network. I always have this thing, I call every single one of my servers by an evil character at Disney, so it works. So I could call this one Jafar. And anytime you change the name, it's going to have to be restarted. So we say OK, and it's going to prompt me. I'll say OK, and I'm going to say close, but I'm going to say restart later. So the next thing I do is configure the network settings as well, and I'm going to have you do these labs, so not to worry. So when you go into the network settings, and it's recommended to unclick the IP6, so keep that in mind as well. So Internet Protocol version 4, and your book is going to walk you through what addresses to use. What we're going to be doing is creating a network domain. So for right now, I'm just going to go ahead and call it 3.1 and let it fill in the subnet mask. We're never getting out of the internet, so don't worry about the Vault Gateway. And my very, very first server that we use will become our DNS server. So just on Server 1, we're going to go ahead and repeat this address down. And I'm going to go ahead and restart this then real quick. Of course, it says log off, and I wanted to restart, but that's okay. Just trying to work too quickly through this. Restart. So the changes that I made, I want to make them in effect. I go ahead and restart the machine. When I log in, this machine now will have a static IP address, and it's going to have a new name for the specific server. So my server name is going to be Jafar. Now, again, I didn't really cover a lot with Chapter 1, only just because it really introduces all the new things to Server 2008. And at this point, I want to move on to some of the features of it. And So now, since the OOB doesn't come up, I'm going to type in OOBE, and you will see that there's the address that I have, and I provided a new name for it. As far as screenshots are concerned, a lot of times this is all I need. The OOBE, once we've actually provided all the basic computer information, it allows us to go ahead and automatically update, which you won't be able to do because they are not connected to the internet. And we can download and install updates too. So we don't have to worry about step 2. However, once you finish the basic information for any of your servers, then you can decide what role it's going to take. In the case of server 1, we are actually going to make this one an Active Directory domain controller. And this is actually in Chapter 3. Chapter 3 probably is one of your most important chapters in the entire book because it explains what Active Directory is. So I'm going to hit Add Roles. What Active Directory Services is, it's basically a database. It stores information about the computer network, and it allows us to have a single repository of information stored in one place. It's essentially what it is. Everything to do about my domain is going to be stored in Active Directory. It ends up also being the security context for my domain. It ends up where our security, our certificates, our encryption, everything comes from it. It's also where we're able to create users and groups and assign access to those people. Again, another security feature. So when I add a role, I'm going to say next. And when I want to add Active Directory, I just go ahead and choose Active Domain Services. And it says I'm going to have to require. So we're just going to add the required features. You do not have to, at this point, choose DNS. The very, very first domain controller that we take, essentially what you're doing is you're taking a Windows 2008 machine and you're specifying to it, I'm going to make you a domain controller. So you promote it. And the very first one we promote will install DNS for us. And so you want to let it install DNS for us. So it is something that Microsoft recommends. DNS is not something you want to add later on your own. So I'm going to say just Active Directory. You'll see when I'm finished here. So what this does is just prepare. This whole thing just prepares it. So I'm going to install. It takes maybe 2 minutes. All this is doing when it says add role, we're preparing this server to accept the role of Active Directory. Now what Active Directory does for us is it ends up creating a hierarchical structure. It allows us to be centralized, very scalable. It has, as I said, becomes a security context. All right. And it ends up allowing us to be flexible. I'm looking at this one warning. You can ignore it if it comes up to you. Now there's 2 different ways you can do this. See this? Students say click that link there. This is automatically going to take you into Active Directory mode. So I'm going to press next. I'm going to say next. And we don't actually have a domain right now. So we're going to go ahead and create a new domain and a new forest. So I'm going to say next. The fully qualified domain name is a name that is going to represent you, not only internally to your own users, but externally to the people that might be doing business with you. So as I said, I always have a one that I use for training, evilhangout.org. Okay, so evilhangout.org. I'm going to press next. What it's going to do is verify that this is a legitimate name that's not being used, and it's going to either allow me or not allow me. Rules of thumb for figuring out what your fully qualified domain name are. Do not use your name if you're going to end up creating a user with the same name. You want to make sure it's separated, so it's usually 2 words. Microsoft.com, valenciacollege.edu. So you can have whatever dot whatever you want at the end. It doesn't matter what you use. If it's dot local, that works too. So if you want to call NASCAR.net, okay, 2 separated by a dot. Do not do any more than 2. If you've got a NetBIOS name that is 3, it is going to be very difficult to find objects on your network. The next screen that you come to is Set Force Functionality Level. What this does, you can drop this down, and if you had a mixed domain where you still were supporting Windows Server 2000 or Windows Server 2003, when you set your force function level to those two, it means that you're saying, hey, I still have a machine that's running Windows 2000. At this point, most people will have Windows Server 2003. So if I changed it, let's say to Windows Server 2008 R2, that means that every machine in my domain has to be running Windows Server 2008. So in this case, I'm going to leave it alone by 2003. And I often tell students that if you don't know the answer, you just accept the defaults. And the same thing is here. So this is the same way. That is, one has to be on the domain, and the other one is the forced. So we're saying anybody, we still have 2003 machines. So I'm going to say next. This is the screen that's important. Select additional options. It's selected DNS Forest. It will automatically do it when it's the very first domain controller. I want it to install this. So I'm going to press next. It's going to come up with an error. Used to it. This is a legitimate error. I always tell students, look for this last word, authoritative, or in the second column. It says, DNS cannot be created because the authoritative parent can't be found. Well, the answer is no kidding. We don't have a DNS server. I'm making me the DNS server, so of course you can't find me yet. So if you see that second line saying authoritative parent zone, you're good to go. This is just a recovery password. I would also suggest just using it as the local one for now. But as long as the two are the same, it doesn't matter what they are. Of course, I just deleted it. But I'm going to use the capital PA55W0RD. PA55W0RD on this. And of course, I mismatched them. Capital PA55W0RD. PA55W0RD. All right, then it gives you a summation screen, and check the reboot on conditions, and then you'll be good to go. All right, so hopefully that will help you. You are going to be doing a lab on this too, but again, you will have written instructions on exactly what you have to do. All right, take care.